Here we go. Endurance training in 25 minutes. What does that mean? So first of all, who am I? I'm Ted McDonald. For those of you that don't know, Teddy McDonald, Ted McDonald, both work. And I am an endurance athlete and a yoga teacher. That's right. Construction in the back. So I'll project my voice. But anyway, I'm an endurance athlete and a yoga teacher. This is my yoga studio, which sadly is officially shut down at the moment. But the past 2 decades of my life, I've been doing all kinds of different endurance events, starting with back in the year 2000, I did my first ever marathon. And I'll share that story momentarily. But then I went into doing a triathlon, and then went from a triathlon to an adventure race, small adventure race, which was for us about 3 hours, but it's 2 to 5 hours was the sprint adventure races. And then I went from that to doing a, I think it was a 12 to 24 hour, or maybe it was a 5 to 8 hour race, and then a 12 to 24 hour race, and then a 24 to 36 hour race, and wound up not doing more than 48 hours. I think my longest race was about 36 hours. So this immediately puts you into the endurance category, right? There's no doubt about that. But what I wanted to, what I wanted to share with you guys is why an endurance athlete, what to do, and then how to do it, right? So this all comes from the idea, since we've been sort of shut down and quarantined, I decided that I wanted to teach more online. A lot of the stuff that I do with my own life and what I do that helps me live kind of this happy, awesome, adventurous life. And I put out to the people in this conscious endurance community, which if you don't know what that is, go to my website, teddymcdonald.com, and click on the community, sign up for the newsletter, but then click on the community link, and that will take you to kind of like a Facebook group. It's its own platform. And in there, I asked the people, what would you like to learn? And mindset and motivation was the month of July. The month of August is endurance training. There's definitely a few athletes in there who just want to hear some of my experiences and help them in some way, shape, or form. So this whole entire month will be all about endurance training, what that means, maybe the nutrition we'll get into. I'll ask people, if you get in there, and I'll put up a poll in the next day or so, and we'll go a little deeper this month into endurance training, aspects of endurance training. So today I figured we'd talk about why and how and what, or what and how. All right. So first of all, have you ever just wanted to do an endurance event? What is an endurance event? Who knows? I don't know. An endurance event for you could be a 10K. It could be simple. You'd be like, 10K, man, if I could only, I talked to a guy who said, man, if I could only run 10K. 10K is 6.2 miles, depending on, what measurement you're using. But to be able to do that for this particular guy was unbelievable, right? It was just like so far out of, his realm of thinking. And for me, back in the day when I did my first marathon, the marathon for me was way outside my realm of thinking. And I think that is probably one of the best ways to describe what is an actual endurance event, is what you could do that's beyond your capability. Because like I say, for everyone it's different. A half marathon, there are certain strict endurance athletes that will tell you half marathon is not an endurance event. But the truth is, a half marathon is an endurance event for someone who doesn't run more than 5K, or who doesn't run at all, right? That is a huge feat to be able to run 2 or 3 hours for 13.1 miles. That is absolutely, without question, an endurance event. So why would anybody want to do something so silly? So silly, it's just so silly. But the thing is, for me, it ignited a passion inside that I can't really explain. I can only share my experience. So the marathon, the marathon was my first marathon was honestly one of the hardest events I'd ever done up to that time in my life. And I was training, I had friends, a little training group, and we ran 3 times a week. It was simple. We ran a half an hour to 45 minutes twice a week, and we did a long run on the weekends. And I joined them on a 10-mile run, and they did 3 minutes of running, 1 minute of walking, 3 minutes of running, 1 minute of walking. I thought, oh, geez, anybody can do that. You just got to run a little bit, and you get to walk, and run a little bit, and you get to walk, right? So you just got to suffer for 3 minutes, and then you can walk again. And they were doing the whole entire marathon that way. And I, befriended one of the women that was in this little training group, and she and I decided to run together, and we decided to run as long as we could, and then we would stop. We didn't want to do the whole run, walk thing. So we wound up running about 14 miles, and then her knee started to hurt, and then at 17 miles, I was on my own. And she finished 15 minutes behind me or whatever it was, but it took me 4.5 hours, just over 4.5 hours to do the marathon. I was not concerned in the least bit with time, which is one of the things that we will discuss in endurance training, but I was not concerned in the least bit with time. And now, when I set up for a race and I go do a race or an event, I give myself a big, wide range of time to finish in. Because if I think, oh, well, I can probably swim it in an hour, or 48 minutes, or I can probably bike it in 6 hours, or whatever, 2 hours, and then I cut it so close that I don't give myself time just to be part of the experience. Then it becomes this whole negative experience, and this is a very slippery slope for endurance athletes. Endurance athletes oftentimes get very upset with themselves when they don't perform to a certain level. And if that's you and that's motivation for you, then more power to you. But I much prefer to be kind. As a yoga guy coming to the endurance world, it was one of my secret sauces that I used. And when I was doing these 24-hour events, we'd come up against a team, and this team would be super aggro, and we'd be breathing, and we called ourselves the Zen Warriors. And that was it. We were pushing through as hard as we could like a warrior, but we were doing it in this kind of Zen-like way. And I think that's the best way to be in an endurance event. Personally, that's just my opinion. So what this ignited in me was this passion to experience things that I normally would never experience. I never in a million years thought I would ever do a marathon, and then there I was doing a marathon. And then later I signed up for the triathlon, and I swam in the ocean, a half mile in the ocean. I couldn't believe it. My cousin showed up in the morning the day we were gonna race, and he knocks on my door, and he goes, Patrick, if you're out there watching, he goes, dude, I can't do it. I said, what do you mean you can't do it? We trained, we're ready to go. This is it, man, it's race day. What do you mean? He's like, sharks. I'm like, what do you mean sharks? Sharks are not gonna come and eat you, man. It's not happening. Anyway, he was so petrified of sharks that morning, but we went out and we did it. And it was, I remember going from, talking about struggling and suffering. The first time I trained in the pool, I was able to go there and back 5 times, literally 10 times back and forth in the pool. And I had to stop. It was 250 yards, and I thought, there's no chance I'm gonna make it. Yards, meters, 800 meters is a half mile, and yards, 1,760, basically 900 yards or something like that. What is that? 18, yeah, almost 900 yards. And whatever it is, 870 some odd yards. And I thought, there's no chance. There's no chance I'm gonna be able to do that much swimming in the ocean, no less, because you have to deal with waves. And there was one year I did this particular race, the Malibu Triathlon, and the buoy decided to unhitch from the ground, from the ocean floor, and started to float back. So I had to swim an extra probably, I don't know, let's just say 300 meters around the buoy, right? So you never know about these things, and there's all this fear that comes up, but what happens when you decide that you're going to take on a goal that is so much farther out than you think, and then you get consistent with your training and your nutrition and your recovery, and then you actually get to race day and you accomplish, doesn't matter the time, forget about the time for a moment, but then you actually accomplishment theory, you accomplish your goal of finishing the race. Finishing is the number one goal. And then you get this sense of, oh my God, I cannot believe, like I crossed the finish line in the marathon and I thought, wow, if I just did that, what else is there out there that I can do? Because it was such a euphoric feeling for me. I came around mile 25, and you may have heard this story before, but I came around mile 25 and the road is closed off and there's balloons all the way across the road, and you know, I'm running, and then all of a sudden through my glasses I start weeping. I'm like, what is going on? And I realized that at that moment I could stop, literally stop and walk and finish a full marathon. And I'm just a little guy from Long Island. There's no chance that I, at any point in my life, was actually going to do a marathon. Yet there I was, doing it. And I didn't walk the last mile, I ran the last mile, I trotted the last mile, but I did it. And then I thought, wow, you know, this is it. You walk through this looking glass almost. And then you go, wow, well, if I can do that, there's probably other things that I don't know I could do that I could do. And that is why I compete and take part, participate, and, you know, not win, but take part in these endurance events, because it pushes myself, I push myself to a place beyond what the level of my mind can kind of conceive. And I love that idea, because oftentimes we, collective we, get stuck in believing what our mind tells us. It's time to stop that. Don't believe what your mind tells you, right? It's all about going, hey, I'm gonna go do this goal. So here's another story, another for instance. I'm leading a group yoga retreat to Peru, down in the Sacred Valley. My friend Scott runs an organization called the Go Campaign. So we raised money for his projects that he supports down in that area. We also saw Machu Picchu and Cusco and Ollantaytambo and all these different little Pisac Market and all these different places down there. And one of the guys on that trip, Rami, a friend of mine, runner, he said, hey, why don't we don't do the Inca Trail in this trip? Why don't we run that? Why don't we come back next year and run the Inca Trail? I said, oh, I mean, I guess, sure, why not? It's normally a 4-day hike, and you have to go to spot A, have lunch, spot B, camp out. Next day, spot A, have lunch, spot B, camp out. And you don't, nobody runs it. It's not a thing. You don't do that. However, mi amigo Carlos, down in Peru, he was able to talk to the Ministry of Tourism, and he basically got us these permits, special permits, to run it in 1 day. And I will tell you, it took us 8 hours to run this Inca Trail. So it wound up being like 22 miles or something like that, 19, 22 miles, I forget. Up to 14,000 feet, back down, up to 13,000 feet, back down, another, I mean, it was just, and it was so unbelievable that by the end, and you look at Machu Picchu down in the, after you come and you cross over the Sun Gate, and you look down and you see Machu Picchu, and it is so awe-inspiring. It is incredible to have this experience. By the way, this experience I'm sure happens with everyone who does the 4-day hike. We just happened to do it in 1 day. But that moment of looking at that, both of us just broke down in tears and thought, God, it's just so beautiful, this experience. And we set it up and we trained for it, and you know, and we climbed and we went here and there and all over. And the thing is, when you become, so this is the why. This is the why, because you get to experience these things, and they are unbelievable. So I implore you not to necessarily become an endurance athlete if that's not for you, but to find out for you, pick some goal that's a little bit further away, that's a little bit harder to do, and then start to go toward it, right? So that's the why. The how is the training, the consistency. I'm a USA Triathlon coach. There's loads of coaches out there, from endurance coaches to triathlon coaches to running coaches to cycling coaches to all kinds of coaches. But hire a coach, find somebody to help you, or just get a friend and then figure it out on your own to get there and be consistent and continue to do what actually, to get to your goal, right? That is the sort of how. And the what is so cool, because the what is whatever you want it to be. So 2 years ago, we're August 2020 right now, July 2018, 2 years ago, we did a trip again with Scott and the Go Campaign crew. We went to Go Campaign donors. We went to Kilimanjaro, Tanzania. We went to visit a bunch of different locations. We raised, oh gosh, I think it was $188,000 or maybe more than that, $200,000 for a school. And then my friend Kathy and Rami and John and Jamie and other people were all with us in this group of, I don't know what it was, 18 or something like that. And we hiked to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And there was 18, because 12 made it to the top and 6 did not. Or 16, 4 didn't make it. Something like that, I forget. But anyway, it was 2 years ago. I don't even remember that. And the point is, we put ourselves through training, through suffering, through struggle, to be able to have this moment. Now, forever, I am someone who's climbed Kilimanjaro. It is something that no one can ever take away from you. So the what is whatever you want to create. You can go on a big long hike. You can go, there's right here in Santa Monica, the Santa Monica Mountains. You can go from the Palisades all the way to Oxnard, which if you're local, you understand what that means. But there's one trail that goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down for 67 miles and about 14 or 15,000 feet of climbing. That's something that I want to do. That is an endurance event. It will take me 12 hours, 10, 12, 15 hours to walk it or run it. So I want to bike it. I want to do both. At some point in my life, I will bike that and I will run it. So now we get into kind of our framework of how. So you got the why, you got the how, and you got the what. Now the framework. So the framework is, we talked about it, you have to begin. And so you pick your goal, whatever it is, and then you figure out, you got to buy a plane ticket, right? You got to get the right equipment. You got to do all those things. And again, you can do that on your own. You can have your coach do it. You can have your coach help you, whatever it is. But so you begin, and then you be consistent. You have to be consistent with your training and with your mind. So this is the interesting thing, and I don't think I've shared this story too much, but the way that I actually quit smoking 24 years ago is actually the same way that I do my endurance event. So the same way that I think about it. I think about the date, the goal, every day. Am I doing what I need to do to be able to experience this event in the best way possible? I mean, that's it. So whether that is climbing Kilimanjaro, doing an Ironman, half Ironman, small little 10K, right? If I'm going to do a 10K, for the most part, depending on my body, I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. It's a sprint event for me. But lately, I would say in the last, for sure during the pandemic, but for the last year probably, I haven't run more than, well, I shouldn't say that, because I did the Malibu half marathon. And then in, I think, January, I did a 30K. So those are the two biggest events that I've done in the last year. So right now, I'm in a little bit of a lull, which leads me to the third point. The third and final point is be kind. Be kind to yourself. So many times there are endurance athletes who actually just get so negative you know, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and then they force themselves, and then they get injured more, and then they can't do what they love to do. Excuse me. So please be kind. So very simple. Begin, be consistent, and be kind. And those are the three main things that you have to do in order to become an endurance athlete. So this month, what we're going to do is talk about different aspects of endurance training. I will go live once a week, like I'm doing now, like I did last month, and we'll talk about it. So I know that we're going to talk about nutrition. I know that we're going to talk about recovery, and I know that we're going to talk about training and what does it take to actually get to mile 21 in the marathon, 22. What does it feel like, you know, when you're cycling in an Ironman and you're at mile 85 and you still have 27 more miles to go, 26 more miles to go, whatever it is, and then you have to do a marathon. What are you thinking at that point when you're up at Stella Peak on Kilimanjaro and you're puking, excuse me, and you think there's no chance I'm gonna get to the top of this, and you go anyway. And this is the microcosm of the macrocosm of the life that we create for ourselves. What is it in your life? Where do you want to get to, even if you have to suffer along the way? In my opinion, especially if you have to suffer along the way. How do you handle that suffering? So we're going to talk about some of that too. All right? And that's going to be it for me today. Remember, go to youtube.com/TeddyMcDonald1. That's the YouTube channel. Also go to my website, subscribe to YouTube. Go to my website, TeddyMcDonald.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Click that community link. Join the Conscious Endurance community and share what you're doing and what you're training for. And I know there's a pandemic and all kinds of races are canceled, but it doesn't matter. We're still training. We're still doing what we do, because guess what? The races will come back. And oh, guess what else? You don't need a race to go run the Inca Trail, or well, that you might need, but to go run the Backbone Trail, you don't need it. So don't let the situation of the day affect what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, right? So thank you so much. I always appreciate your support and your kindness, and we'll see you back here next week. If you didn't know this, by the way, you're seeing this just because it's a different time of day. I also go live every day and teach yoga 6 days a week, 9 o'clock. So I hope to see you then. Thanks so much, you guys, and I will see you soon.